Admiral Kextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the blue planet grow larger on the viewing screen. His four arms crossed behind his back as he studied the third world from their target star. Earth looked exactly like the reports said it would. Blue oceans covered most of its surface with brown and green land masses scattered between them. White clouds swirled across the atmosphere in patterns that reminded him of 1,000 other worlds he had conquered. The Velthari fleet stretched out behind his ship like a metal storm cloud. 500 warships of different sizes filled the dark space around Earth's moon. Each ship carried enough firepower to burn continents and enough soldiers to control entire planets. Admiral Kextar had used this same fleet to bring 847 worlds under Velthari control over the past 3,000 years. Earth would be number 848. Captain Yulnos approached from the sensor station with a data pad in his long fingers. His purple skin had the pale tint that meant he was excited about something. "Admiral, the preliminary scans are complete," he said, while handing over the device. "The humans are even more primitive than we expected. They have barely reached their own moon, and their largest space stations could fit inside our shuttle bays." Kextar looked at the numbers scrolling across the screen. Human population sat at just over 8 billion individuals spread across 7 continents. Their technology level registered as barely adequate for basic space travel. Most of their energy still came from burning ancient organic matter they dug from the ground. Their weapons were simple projectile and explosive devices that would barely scratch Velthari armor. "What about their military organization?" asked the Admiral, while studying images of human cities. The buildings looked fragile and temporary compared to Velthari construction. Most were made from processed stone and metal rather than the living crystal that formed proper civilization. "They are divided into nearly 200 separate political units," replied Yulnos with something that might have been amusement in his voice. "These nations fight among themselves constantly. They have never achieved planetary unity. Our intelligence suggests they spend more resources fighting each other than they do advancing their technology." This information pleased Kextar greatly. Divided worlds were always easier to conquer than unified ones. The humans would waste time arguing about how to respond to the Velthari ultimatum instead of working together. Some nations would try to negotiate separate peace deals. Others would surrender immediately. A few might even help the Velthari in exchange for favorable treatment. Down. On Earth's surface, Dr. Daeho Kim was having the worst day of his career. The deep space monitoring network he had spent 5 years building had just detected the largest collection of artificial objects ever seen in the solar system. The objects were clearly ships, and they were clearly not human. He sat in the control room of the United Earth Defense Initiative headquarters, staring at screen after screen of impossible data. "How many ships are we looking at?" asked General Minho Park from behind him. The military commander had arrived 30 minutes after the first alerts went out. His uniform was slightly wrinkled, suggesting he had been sleeping when the call came. "Computer, estimates put the number at somewhere between 400 and 600 individual vessels," replied Daeho without looking away from his screens. "The largest ones are over 3 kilometers long. We have nothing even close to that size." Minho felt his stomach drop. Earth's entire space defense consisted of 12 orbital platforms and perhaps 30 patrol ships. Even if every human military unit worked together perfectly, they would be outnumbered 20 to 1. Against technology that could cross the stars while humanity still struggled to reach Mars, the odds became meaningless. "Have they tried to communicate?" asked the general while pulling up tactical displays on his personal tablet. Red icons representing enemy ships filled the screen like angry insects. "Nothing yet," said Daeho, "but Dr. Jiwon Lee is monitoring all frequencies. If they send any kind of message, we will know immediately." Dr. Jiwon Lee sat 3 floors down in the communications center, surrounded by the most advanced radio equipment on Earth. She had been a linguistics professor before joining the Defense Initiative, and now she found herself humanity's best hope for first contact with an alien species. The irony was not lost on her that she had spent years studying dead human languages, while the most important translation work in history was about to begin. Her equipment picked up constant chatter between the alien ships, but the signals used mathematical patterns completely unlike human communication. The aliens seemed to use some kind of quantum encoding that her computers could not break. She could tell they were talking to each other, but had no idea what they were saying. "Anything useful?" asked her assistant Kyung-ho, who had been monitoring. Secondary frequencies. They definitely have a command structure, replied Ji-won while adjusting her headphones. One ship is sending more signals than the others and getting responses from the entire fleet. But I cannot make sense of the content. The language is unlike anything in our databases. Back on the Velthari flagship, Admiral Kextar was reviewing the final attack plans with his senior staff. The tactical hologram showed Earth surrounded by red markers indicating primary targets. Major population centers would be hit first to demonstrate Velthari power. Military installations would be destroyed to prevent organized resistance. Communication. Networks would be disabled to stop the humans from coordinating their response. How long do we give them to surrender? Asked Commander Thexville, who would lead the first wave of attacks. His eagerness for battle showed in the way his secondary arms kept flexing unconsciously. The standard 72 hours, replied Kextar. That gives them time to understand their situation and make the rational choice. Most species surrender within 48 hours once they see a proper demonstration of our capabilities, and if they refuse, pressed Thexville. Then we proceed with standard conquest protocol, said the Admiral coldly. Destroy their military forces, occupy their major population centers, install a provisional government. The same process we have used successfully for 3 millennia. The communication officer at the front of the bridge turned to face them. Admiral, we are receiving multiple transmissions from the planet's surface. The humans are trying to communicate with us on several different frequencies. Put it through the translator, ordered Kextar. Within moments, the bridge speakers crackled, with primitive human voices speaking in dozens of different languages. The universal translator struggled with the variety, but managed to convert most of it into understandable Velthari. This is the United Nations of Earth, came one voice. We request peaceful dialogue with your representatives. Chinese Space Command calling unknown vessels, said another. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions. Russian Federation demands immediate explanation for presence in Earth. Orbital space, declared a third voice with obvious anger. Admiral Kextar listened to the babel of human voices for several minutes before ordering the communication officer to cut the feed. The divided response confirmed everything their intelligence had suggested. The humans could not even agree on who should speak for their species. Send the standard ultimatum, he commanded. All frequencies, all languages. Make sure every human on that planet understands their situation. The message that went out was simple and direct. The Velthari Confederation claimed dominion over the Sol system and all worlds within it. The human species was granted 72 hours to surrender unconditionally. Resistance would result in the complete destruction of human civilization. Compliance would ensure survival under Velthari guidance and protection. Dr. Daeho Kim read the translated message 3 times before the full meaning sank in. The aliens were not explorers or traders or even refugees. They were conquerors who had done this before. Many times before, based on their confidence and organization. Get me every world leader on secure channel, he told his communication staff. And find me everything we have on these Velthari. If they have conquered other worlds, there might be some record of them somewhere. General Minho Park was already mobilizing every military asset Earth possessed. Orbital platforms powered up their weapons systems. Naval fleets moved to protect major coastal cities. Air forces scrambled fighters to patrol national airspace. It would not be enough, but humanity would not surrender without a fight. The next 72 hours would determine whether the human species survived as a free people or became another entry in the Velthari catalog of conquered worlds. Admiral Kextar had no doubt about the outcome. He had seen this drama play out 847 times before, and it always ended the same way. But deep beneath Earth's oceans, something ancient stirred in response to the threat above. In crystal formations older than human civilization, patterns of light began to pulse with slow, steady rhythms. The signal was weak after millions of years of dormancy, but it was growing stronger. Humanity's true heritage was beginning to wake up. The 72-hour deadline passed with humanity's defiant refusal to surrender. Admiral Kextar was not surprised. Young species often needed to see Velthari power before they understood their situation. He gave Commander Thexville permission to begin the demonstration. The first wave of Velthari fighters swept down from orbit like silver meteors. Their target was the International Space Station and 3 orbital defense platforms that Earth had hastily armed with missile systems. The human weapons fired desperately at the approaching alien craft, but their primitive projectiles moved too slowly and exploded harmlessly against Velthari energy shields. Thexville watched from his command fighter as human defenders died with barely a fight. The space station broke apart in seconds under focused plasma beams. The orbital platforms lasted slightly longer, but their hull metal melted like snow under directed energy weapons. Within 10 minutes, Earth's space defenses were reduced to glowing debris. "Resistance eliminated," reported Thexville to the flagship. "Beginning atmospheric insertion for surface targets." Dr. Daeho Kim watched his life's work die on the monitoring screens. Every satellite and platform he had designed was gone. The alien fighters moved through space with impossible grace, while human forces seemed clumsy and slow by comparison. Earth's military technology was not just inferior, but laughably primitive. "Sir, we are getting reports from ground-based radar," called out one of his technicians. "Alien fighters are entering the atmosphere over major population centers." General Minho Park coordinated the defense from his command bunker deep beneath Seoul. Fighter jets launched from bases across the world to intercept the alien craft, but the results were predictable. Human missiles could not lock onto targets that moved faster than their guidance systems could track. Velthari weapons cut through Earth's finest aircraft like they were made of paper. "Fall back to second-line positions," ordered Minho into his communication headset. "All units implement guerrilla protocols. We cannot match them in open battle." The alien demonstration lasted exactly 1 hour. Military bases in 12 countries suffered precision strikes that destroyed hangars and command centers while leaving most personnel alive. The message was clear. Velthari could kill every human on Earth whenever they chose, but preferred to avoid unnecessary casualties. Commander Thexville felt somewhat disappointed by how easily human forces collapsed. Their fighters had shown courage, but no tactical skill. Their weapons were crude, and their coordination was poor. This would be one of the shortest conquests in Velthari history. But as his forces landed to secure the destroyed bases, something unexpected happened. Human survivors did not retreat or surrender as anticipated. Instead, small groups of soldiers began launching attacks against Velthari landing parties using weapons and tactics that seemed far more sophisticated than their regular military. Hyunwoo. Nam crouched behind the wreckage of a burning tank watching alien soldiers advance through the ruins of Osan Air Base. The former fighter pilot had been grounded after an injury 6 months earlier, but now found himself leading 20 surviving airmen in what appeared to be a hopeless fight. "Wait until they reach the fuel depot," he whispered to his men. "Remember what I taught you about moving between shots?" The Velthari soldiers wore powered armor that made them twice as tall as humans, and their plasma rifles could punch through concrete walls. But something felt wrong as Hyunwoo studied their movements. The aliens moved efficiently but predictably, following patterns that suggested they expected no real resistance. When the first alien reached the predetermined position, Hyunwoo gave the signal. His men opened fire from 6 different positions using weapons salvaged from the base armory. But instead of the scattered, desperate shooting, the Velthari expected the human fire came in precise, coordinated bursts that found gaps in their armor. Coverage. 3 Velthari soldiers went down in the first exchange. The survivors spun to return fire, but the humans had already moved to new positions with speed that seemed impossible for their short legs. More shots came from unexpected angles, forcing the aliens to take cover behind concrete barriers. Hyunwoo felt strange as he sprinted between positions. His body moved faster than it should, and his reflexes seemed sharper than normal. Time appeared to slow down, allowing him to see exactly where enemy fire would come and dodge before the shots arrived. His men were experiencing the same phenomenon, though none of them mentioned it. "They are not where they should be," growled one of the Velthari sergeants into his communication unit. "Human mobility does not match our intelligence estimates." The fighting continued for 2 hours before Velthari reinforcements arrived and forced the humans to retreat into the surrounding hills. But Thexville was troubled by the casualty reports. His forces had taken 43 deaths and over 100 wounded against what should have been a simple mop-up operation. Similar reports came in from battle sites around the world. Human resistance was fiercer and more effective than predicted. Worse, the humans seemed to be adapting to Velthari tactics with disturbing speed. Units that should have been destroyed in minutes were holding out for hours and inflicting significant casualties. Dr. Somin Choi had been conducting deep ocean research when the invasion began. Her submersible was 3 kilometers down in the Mariana Trench when the first alien ships appeared. By the time she surfaced, the war had already started, and her research vessel found itself alone in the vast Pacific with nowhere safe to go. "Captain, we need to head for the nearest port," she told the ship's commander while studying sonar readings on her equipment. "All major ports are under alien attack," replied Captain Jinwoo, who had been monitoring radio communications. "We might be safer out here." That was when Somin noticed something impossible on her deep scan sonar. The ocean floor was showing structures that had not been there during her previous surveys. Massive geometric formations were rising from the abyssal depths like sleeping giants coming awake. "Take us back down," she ordered while checking her equipment for malfunctions. "I need to confirm these readings." The submersible descended through layers of crushing darkness until its lights illuminated the ocean floor. What Somin saw made her forget about the war raging above. Crystalline structures the size of skyscrapers jutted up from the seafloor in perfect geometric arrangements. They pulsed with soft blue light that seemed to respond to the presence of her vessel. "These are not natural formations," she whispered while recording everything her cameras could capture. "Someone built these, but the geological surveys show nothing here for millions of years." The crystals were beautiful, but alien in their perfect symmetry. They formed complex patterns that hurt to look at directly, as if her brain was not designed to process their mathematical relationships. But most disturbing was how they seemed to be waking up after eons of sleep. Back on the surface, Dr. Yoonji Seo was documenting something equally impossible in her neuroscience laboratory. Soldiers wounded in the fighting showed brain activity patterns that violated everything she knew about human consciousness. Their neural networks were operating at levels that should have caused immediate death, but instead seemed to enhance their physical capabilities. "Look at these scans," she told her assistant while pointing at brain imaging displays. "This soldier was clinically dead for 4 minutes after taking shrapnel to the head, but his neural activity spiked beyond measurable limits during the trauma, and somehow he not only survived, but returned to combat effectiveness." The patterns made no sense according to current medical knowledge. Human brains simply could not generate the electromagnetic fields she was detecting without massive seizures and cellular breakdown, yet her patients showed no signs of neurological damage despite producing energy signatures comparable to industrial equipment. "Doctor, we are getting similar reports from hospitals around the world," said her assistant while reviewing data from other medical facilities. "Wounded humans are recovering from injuries that should be fatal and displaying enhanced strength and reflexes." Yoonji stared at the data trying to find rational explanations. But the evidence was overwhelming. Something was changing in human physiology at the cellular level. The trauma of combat and the stress of invasion seemed to be triggering dormant capabilities that medical science insisted did not exist. On the Velthari flagship, Admiral Kextar reviewed battle reports with growing concern. What should have been a routine demonstration of power had turned into a costly military operation. Human resistance was not only continuing, but actually intensifying as the fighting progressed. "Our casualties are 5 times higher than predicted," reported his intelligence officer while updating tactical displays. "Human forces are adapting to our weapons and tactics far faster than any species we have encountered. Are they receiving outside assistance?" asked Kextar while studying footage of human fighters moving with inhuman speed and precision. "Negative, sir. All their technology remains primitive, but their soldiers are performing beyond biological limitations. Some units are reporting humans who seem to anticipate our tactical movements before we execute them." The Admiral felt an old memory stirring in the back of his mind. 3,000 years of conquest had exposed him to many species and many mysteries. The war had been raging for 6 days when Jiho Lee experienced something that changed everything he thought he knew about being human. The engineering student was trapped in the ruins of Tokyo along with thousands of other civilians when Velthari ground forces began their systematic occupation of the city. Jiho huddled in the basement of a collapsed office building with 12 other survivors, including an elderly woman named Mrs. Sato and 2 young children who had lost their parents in the bombing. Outside, he could hear the heavy footsteps of alien soldiers and the whining of their vehicles as they patrolled the destroyed streets. They are searching building by building, whispered Kenji, who had been monitoring their movements through a crack in the debris. We need to move soon, or they will find us. The problem was that moving meant crossing 2 blocks of open ground to reach the subway tunnels where larger groups of survivors were hiding. Velthari sensors could detect human body heat through most materials, and their weapons could kill from hundreds of meters away. It seemed impossible. I will go first, said Jiho while checking his watch. If I can reach the corner building, I can signal whether the path is clear. Mrs. Sato grabbed his arm. With surprising strength, you are just a boy. Let one of the adults take the risk. But Jiho felt something building inside him as he looked at the frightened faces around him. These people were depending on him, and he would not let them down. The sensation was like electricity, flowing through his nerves combined with a sense of connection to something vast and powerful. I can do this, he said with certainty that surprised him. Trust me. When Jiho stepped out into the rubble-filled street, his perception of reality shifted dramatically. He could see electromagnetic fields flowing around Velthari equipment like visible rivers of energy. The alien's movements seemed slow and predictable, as if he was watching them through thick glass. Most remarkable was his ability to sense their attention and intentions before they acted. A Velthari patrol rounded the corner 50 meters ahead, but Jiho somehow knew they would look left toward a burning car before scanning right toward his position. He used that knowledge to sprint across the street and dive behind a concrete barrier just as their sensors swept through the space he had occupied. The distance that should have taken 30 seconds of careful movement was covered in 8 seconds of fluid motion that felt like dancing. Jiho's body moved with perfect balance and coordination, as if gravity was just a suggestion his muscles could choose to ignore. From the barrier, he could see the subway entrance was clear and signaled for the others to follow. But when Mrs. Sato tried to cross the street, her elderly legs could not match his inhuman speed. A Velthari soldier spotted her movement and raised his plasma rifle. Time seemed to stop as Jiho watched the alien weapon charging up for a kill shot. Without thinking, he reached out with his mind toward the rifle and felt something impossible happen. The weapon's energy matrix responded to his will and began overloading in the soldier's hands. The rifle exploded in a shower of sparks that sent the Velthari stumbling backward. Mrs. Sato completed her crossing while the alien was blinded and confused. The other survivors followed quickly while Jiho provided cover by somehow scrambling their sensors with focused thought. How did you do that? Gasped Mrs. Sato when they reached the subway tunnels. Jiho stared at his hands, trying to understand what had happened. I do not know. It felt like the weapon wanted to obey me. Similar incidents were occurring around the world as humans under extreme stress began manifesting abilities that science insisted were impossible. In London, a trapped soldier named Marcus lifted a 2-ton concrete slab with his bare hands to free wounded comrades. In Cairo, a nurse named Amara healed fatal wounds by laying her hands on patients and somehow willing their cells to repair themselves. Dr. Somin Choi was documenting the largest of these incidents from her research vessel in the Pacific. The crystalline structures on the ocean floor had grown to enormous size and were now visible from the surface as pillars of blue light rising from the depths. Similar formations were appearing near major population centers around the world. The energy signatures are off the charts, she reported to Dr. Daeho Kim over the satellite link. These crystals are generating power levels comparable to fusion reactors, but using principles we do not understand. Are they connected to the enhanced human abilities we are seeing? Asked Daeho from his bunker command center. I believe so. The timing is too precise to be coincidental. As human stress levels increase from the invasion, the crystals respond with higher energy output. It is as if they are designed to activate when humanity faces extinction. Dr. Yunji Seo had reached similar conclusions from her medical research. The enhanced humans all showed identical changes in their brain structure, with new neural pathways that seemed to connect them to external energy sources. But the most remarkable discovery was that these pathways had always been there dormant in human DNA, waiting for the right trigger. We are not evolving, she explained to the Emergency Science Council meeting via video link. We are remembering, These abilities appear to be part of our genetic heritage that has been locked away until now. Admiral Kextar was receiving increasingly disturbing reports from his ground commanders. Human resistance had evolved from desperate guerrilla attacks to coordinated operations that seemed to anticipate Velthari tactics. Worse, his forces were suffering equipment failures that their engineers could not explain. "Sir, the humans appear to be interfering with our technology through unknown means," reported Commander Thexville from his field headquarters in what had once been Berlin. "Weapons malfunction when they approach certain human fighters. Vehicle guidance systems fail without warning. Even our communication networks experience disruption. Show me the tactical recordings," ordered Kextar while pulling up displays of recent engagements. The footage was deeply troubling. Human fighters moved faster than biology should allow and seemed to anticipate plasma shots before they were fired. Some appeared to deflect energy weapons with bare hands or cause Velthari equipment to malfunction through proximity alone. "Computer analysis suggests these are not technology-based effects," continued Thexville. "The humans appear to be manipulating electromagnetic fields through biological processes we cannot identify." Kextar felt ancient fears stirring in his consciousness. The oldest Velthari legends spoke of the precursors who had ruled the galaxy millions of years ago before ascending to higher dimensions of existence. According to the myths, they had possessed abilities that seemed magical to younger species, the power to manipulate matter and energy through pure consciousness. Initiate. Full archive search on the ancient protocols, he commanded his intelligence staff. Cross-reference all current observations with historical data about precursor descendants. The search results that came back an hour later filled Kextar with dread. The energy signatures detected around Earth matched archived readings from archaeological sites connected to the vanished precursors. The human abilities being reported were identical to powers described in the oldest myths about the galaxy's former masters. On Earth, Heian Park was making discoveries that confirmed the Admiral's worst fears. The meditation teacher had been working with awakened humans to help them control their new abilities and had found that specific mental states could dramatically enhance their power. Focus on unity. She instructed a group of resistance fighters in the hidden base beneath Sol. Feel your connection to every other human and to the planet itself. The crystals respond to collective consciousness, not individual will. When 30 humans meditated together while connected to the crystalline network, their combined effect was extraordinary. Velthari equipment failed across an entire city district. Alien soldiers found their weapons useless and their vehicles dead. Several reported feeling overwhelming compulsion to withdraw from human territory. Heian realized they were not just gaining superpowers, but accessing a planet-wide consciousness network that had been dormant for millions of years. The crystals were not alien artifacts, but human technology created by an advanced civilization that had transcended physical existence while leaving their descendants behind. "We are not becoming something new," she explained to the other awakened humans. "We are remembering what we always were." Dr. Daeho Kim coordinated the sharing of this information with resistance cells around the world. If humanity's genetic heritage included connection to a planetary consciousness network, then the invasion had awakened something far more dangerous than the Velthari realized. "Can we use this network to coordinate a global counterattack?" asked General Minho Park during their strategy meeting. "Theoretically, yes," replied Daeho, while studying energy readings from crystal sites worldwide. "But we need more awakened humans who can interface with the system effectively." The answer came from an unexpected source. Jiho Lee had been experimenting with his abilities in the Tokyo tunnels and discovered he could not only connect to the Yi network, but help others access it as well. When he touched another person while focused on the crystals, they temporarily gained enhanced abilities. "I can teach others," he reported through the Resistance communication system. The awakening spreads from person to person like a chain reaction. Each new awakened human can help awaken more. The crystalline network reached full activation as Admiral Kextar prepared his planet-killing weapons. Deep beneath every major landmass on Earth, massive crystal formations rose toward the surface, carrying with them the complete history of humanity's true heritage. The awakened humans felt the surge of ancient knowledge flowing through their enhanced consciousness like a river of liquid starlight. Dong-Yun Kim stood at the center of the largest crystal formation in Seoul, feeling the weight of millions of years pressing against his mind. The former software engineer had become humanity's primary interface with the network, and through him flowed the memories of the ethereal dominion, the advanced human civilization that had ruled the galaxy before transcending physical existence. They knew this day would come, he whispered to the other awakened humans gathered around him. Our ancestors foresaw that their descendants would face extinction and prepared for our awakening. The memories were overwhelming, but clear. Millions of years ago, humans had achieved technology so advanced, it seemed like magic to younger species. They could manipulate matter at the quantum level, reshape entire star systems, and exist simultaneously across multiple dimensions. But their greatest achievement was consciousness itself, the ability to transcend physical limitations and become beings of pure thought and energy. However, transcendence required abandoning their physical forms and leaving the galaxy they had, protected for eons. Before ascending, they seeded selected worlds with their genetic descendants and created the crystalline networks to preserve their legacy. Earth was not a primitive backwater, but the most important repository of human potential in the galaxy. The locks on our abilities were not punishment, but protection, continued Dong-Yun as more memories flooded through him. Our ancestors knew that power without wisdom leads to destruction. The awakening only comes when humanity faces extinction and learns unity through struggle. Dr. So-Min Choi monitored the revelations from her research vessel as worldwide crystal formations transmitted their stored data directly into human consciousness. Every awakened human was receiving the same information, simultaneously creating a shared understanding of their species' true nature. The crystals are not just power sources, she reported to the Emergency Council. They contain the complete technological and cultural knowledge of the most advanced civilization in galactic history. We are not gaining superpowers. We are inheriting our birthright. The technological knowledge was staggering. The ethereal dominion had possessed faster than light travel without ships by folding space-time through consciousness alone. They could create matter from pure energy and reshape planetary environments with focused thought. Most importantly, they had developed beyond the need for conquest or domination and instead served as guardians for younger species throughout the galaxy. But the revelation that shocked everyone was the discovery that every other spacefaring civilization in the galaxy existed only because the ethereal dominion had allowed it. The Velthari Confederation and hundreds of other species had been permitted to develop under the watchful guidance of humanity's transcended ancestors. Subin Jung led a group of awakened humans in the liberation of Paris while accessing memories of ancient human technology. She found she could manipulate matter at the molecular level, turning Velthari weapons into harmless sculptures with a thought. Force fields sprang into existence around her allies, while her consciousness reached out to disable alien equipment. Across the entire city, the crystals are teaching us, she explained to the resistance fighters following her through the streets. Each ability we manifest unlocks more knowledge. We are not learning new skills, but remembering ones we always possessed. When Velthari soldiers attempted to surround her position, Subin demonstrated technology that shattered their understanding of physics. She created duplicates of herself, from crystallized light that moved independently while maintaining her consciousness. The duplicates could interact with physical matter, but passed through enemy weapons like ghosts. The Velthari forces found themselves fighting an enemy that could be in multiple places simultaneously while manipulating the laws of reality itself. Their energy weapons became flowers, their armor turned to crystal. Their vehicles transformed into abstract art while leaving the occupants unharmed, but thoroughly demoralized. On the Velthari flagship, Admiral Kextar watched his invasion collapse into impossibility. His forces on Earth reported humans who could teleport across continents, communicate instantaneously without technology, and manipulate the fundamental forces of nature. Worse, the effects were spreading to his orbital fleet as awakened humans began projecting their consciousness into space. "Sir, the humans have penetrated our hull armor without breaching it," reported his chief engineer with barely contained panic. "They are somehow existing inside our ship while remaining on the planet's surface. Our security systems cannot detect or stop them." Kextar felt the presence before his sensors registered it. A human consciousness materialized on his bridge not as a physical form, but as a projection of pure awareness that every Velthari could sense. The presence spoke without sound, directly into their minds, with words that carried the weight of cosmic authority. "You have entered a protected system and threatened a guardian species," said the voice that belonged to Dong-Yun Kim, speaking through the crystalline network. "Your actions violate treaties signed before your civilization achieved space flight." "Impossible," replied Kextar while his crew struggled to comprehend what they were experiencing. "Humans are a primitive species. We have observed them for months." "You observed what we chose to show you," continued the presence while memories flooded into Velthari consciousness. "The ethereal dominion has watched your species develop for 50,000 years. Every world you conquered was permitted. Every victory you achieved was allowed. You exist because we protected you from threats you never knew existed." The memories were undeniable. Ancient Velthari legends about the benevolent watchers who protected their homeworld from cosmic disasters were revealed as historical fact. The mysterious energy barriers that had saved their civilization from asteroid impacts and solar flares had been created by transcended humans working to preserve younger species. "The Confederation has conquered 847 worlds," protested Kextar, though his voice lacked conviction. "You have administered 847 worlds under ethereal dominion oversight," corrected the presence. "Your role was to maintain order and protect developing civilizations until they achieved sufficient maturity. You were never conquerors, but guardians acting under ancient mandate." Emergency Counselor Velthara accessed the deepest archives in Velthari historical databases and found confirmation of the impossible claims. References to the ancient compact and the Guardian Mandate appeared in their oldest records, along with genetic markers that proved Velthari biology had been guided by outside influence for millennia. "We were created to serve them," whispered Velthara as the full scope of galactic history became clear. "Our entire civilization exists as part of their plan." Dr. Taehyung Shin made similar discoveries while studying awakened humans in the underground laboratories beneath London. The genetic triggers for awakening followed bloodlines, but not in ways that made biological sense. Some awakened humans had no family connection to others, yet shared identical genetic markers that appeared to have been inserted into human DNA by advanced technology. "The awakening is not random," he reported to the Global Research Network. "Specific humans were chosen before birth to serve as interfaces with the crystalline system. We are dealing with genetic engineering on a scale that encompasses our entire species." The revelation explained why some humans awakened more easily than others and why certain individuals could interface directly with the crystal network. Humanity had been prepared for this moment across thousands of generations with careful genetic modifications designed to preserve essential abilities while hiding them from detection. But the most profound discovery came when fully awakened humans began accessing the deepest layers of crystalline memory. The ethereal dominion had not simply transcended physical existence. They had become the fundamental force that maintained order and consciousness throughout the galaxy. "They are not gone," realized Minseo. "Oh, while serving as a consciousness bridge in the soul crystal chamber. They exist as the underlying structure of reality itself. The awakening does not just restore our abilities, it reconnects us to our transcended ancestors who never truly left." This connection allowed awakened humans to perceive the true scope of galactic civilization. Hundreds of species existed under the protection of transcended human consciousness, including many that believed themselves to be the dominant powers in their regions. The Velthari were just one of dozens of guardian species created to maintain stability until younger civilizations achieved sufficient maturity. "The entire galaxy is a garden," explained Dong-Yun to the assembled awakened humans as the final memories unlocked. "Our ancestors became the gardeners who guide evolution and consciousness development across millions of worlds. The invasion was not an attack on a primitive world, but a test of whether humanity was ready to reclaim its role as the galaxy's guiding intelligence." Admiral Kextar stood before the choice that would define the future of his entire species. The human presence on his bridge waited patiently for his decision, while crystalline energy flowed through every system on his flagship. His weapons were useless, his armor was meaningless. The beings he had intended to conquer possessed power beyond comprehension. Minseo. O manifested her consciousness across the Velthari fleet, simultaneously addressing every ship captain and crew member. Her voice carried the authority of the ethereal dominion and the weight of cosmic law that had governed the galaxy for millions of years. "You have two choices," she explained, while images of galactic history flowed into Velthari minds. "Accept your true role as guardians and protectors, or face the consequences of defying the natural order. Your ancestors made this choice 50,000 years ago when they accepted ethereal dominion guidance. Now you must choose again." The images showed the real history of Velthari civilization. Their homeworld had been dying from environmental collapse when transcended humans intervened to save them. Velthari technology had been guided by subtle influence to prevent them from destroying themselves. Their expansion into space had been carefully orchestrated to give them purpose while keeping them from threatening younger species. "We thought we were conquerors," whispered Commander Thexville as the truth became undeniable. "But we were always servants." "You were always protectors," corrected Minseo with gentle firmness. "The distinction matters. Servants act from compulsion. Protectors act from choice. Today you choose freely what your ancestors accepted from necessity." But Admiral Kextar's pride burned too fiercely to accept submission even to beings of godlike power. 3,000 years of conquest could not end with surrender, regardless of the consequences. He turned to his weapons officer with desperate determination. "Activate the planet crackers," he ordered, while his crew stared at him in shock. "If we cannot rule this world, we will ensure it cannot threaten us. Sir, that would violate every principle of the Guardian Mandate," protested his second-in-command. "Destroying a garden world is forbidden under cosmic law." "There is no cosmic law," snarled Kextar, while forcing the weapons systems online manually. "There are only the strong and the weak. If humans possess such power, let them prove it by stopping me." The planet-killing weapons of the Velthari flagship charged with energy capable of cracking Earth's crust and boiling its oceans. The massive beam projectors aligned with the blue world below, while Admiral Kextar prepared to commit genocide rather than accept defeat. But as his finger moved toward the firing control, something impossible happened. Time seemed to stop, and reality bent around the presence that materialized directly in front of him. Seojin Han stood on the bridge of the flagship not as a projection, but as a physical being who had somehow transported himself across the vacuum of space. "I cannot allow you to harm my world," said Seojin with calm certainty, while the entire bridge crew stared at the human who had appeared from nowhere. Kextar drew his personal sidearm and fired at point-blank range. The plasma bolt passed through Seojin like he was made of light before striking the bulkhead behind him. The human smiled sadly and reached out to touch the Admiral's weapon. The sidearm transformed into a flower of crystallized starlight that sang with harmonious frequencies. The planet-cracking weapons became sculptures of impossible beauty that generated poetry instead of destruction. Throughout the flagship, every weapon and piece of military equipment changed into art that celebrated life rather than ending it. "You see," explained Seojin while the transformation spread to every ship in the Velthari fleet. "We do not fight destruction with destruction. We transform it into creation. This is the power of consciousness transcending matter." Admiral Kextar fell to his knees as the magnitude of human capabilities became clear. A single awakened human had reached across space and transformed his entire fleet without violence or anger. The weapons of conquest had become instruments of beauty and harmony. "How is this possible?" he whispered while staring at his hands, which now glowed with gentle light. "Because matter is just energy crystallized by consciousness," replied Seojun while helping the Admiral to his feet. "When consciousness evolves sufficiently, it can reshape any material form. Your weapons wanted to become art. I simply showed them how." The transformation was spreading beyond the fleet to Velthari forces throughout the galaxy. Every weapon became an instrument of creation. Every warship became a vessel of exploration and assistance. The Confederation's military might had been converted into tools for nurturing younger civilizations. On Earth, Yona Kwan stood at the center of the global crystalline network, addressing not just the Velthari, but every spacefaring species within range of transcended human consciousness. Her words carried across interstellar distances without technology, while her image appeared simultaneously on thousands of worlds. The age of conquest is over, she announced, while energy from the awakened crystals reached beyond the solar system. Humanity has returned to its role as guardian of galactic civilization. All species who wish to continue growing and learning are welcome under our protection. Those who choose destruction will find their tools transformed into instruments of creation. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Species that had lived in fear of the Velthari Confederation emerged from hiding to broadcast messages of welcome to the returned guardians. Civilizations that had been suppressed by Velthari conquest suddenly found their oppressors' weapons turning into schools and hospitals. But the most profound change occurred within the Velthari themselves. Contact with transcended human consciousness triggered dormant genetic modifications that had been placed in their species millennia ago. They began experiencing their own form of awakening as their true purpose was unlocked. "We remember now," said Emergency Counselor Velthara as ancestral memories flooded through her consciousness. "We were created to be shepherds, not wolves. Our aggression was artificial programming designed to make us effective guardians, but our true nature is protective, not destructive." The realization spread through Velthari society like wildfire. Their entire culture had been built on a foundation of false programming that made them believe conquest was their destiny. In reality, they had been designed as a stabilizing force to protect developing worlds from genuine threats while preparing them for eventual independence. Admiral Kextar felt the change within himself as genetic locks released and his consciousness expanded. The pride and aggression that had driven his career melted away, revealing a deep desire to nurture and protect that had always existed beneath the surface programming. "What happens to us now?" he asked Seojun while watching his fleet transform. "From instruments of war into vessels of peace." "You return to your true purpose," replied the awakened human with compassionate understanding. "The galaxy contains many genuine threats. Cosmic disasters, asteroid impacts, stellar collapse, dimensional instabilities. Your fleets become emergency response forces that save civilizations rather than conquering them." The new role appealed to something fundamental in Velthari nature that had been suppressed for millennia. They were engineers and builders by inclination. Converting their skills from conquest to protection felt like coming home after a long exile. Dr. Daeho Kim coordinated the establishment of communication protocols between awakened humanity and the hundreds of species now seeking guidance from their restored guardians. The crystalline network expanded beyond Earth to create instantaneous communication across galactic distances while maintaining respect for each species' autonomy. "We do not rule," he explained to the first interspecies council meeting held simultaneously on dozens of worlds. "We guide and protect when requested. Every civilization must find its own path to transcendence. We simply ensure they have the opportunity to grow without external interference." The transformation of galactic civilization proceeded rapidly as awakened humans shared knowledge and resources with species ready to advance. Technologies that could cure diseases, reshape barren worlds, and extend lifespans were freely given to civilizations that demonstrated wisdom and compassion. But humanity's greatest gift was not technology, but consciousness itself. The crystalline networks taught other species how to develop their own forms of awakening and transcendence. What had taken humans millions of years to achieve could now be accomplished in generations with proper guidance. General Minho Park found himself overseeing Earth's transformation from a hidden world to the center of galactic civilization. Awakened, humans worked with former Velthari commanders to establish protection protocols for younger species while building a society based on cooperation rather than competition. "It feels strange," he admitted to Dr. Jiwon Lee while watching Velthari. "Ships orbit Earth in protective formations. Yesterday they were our enemies. Today they are our allies. Tomorrow they might become something we cannot yet imagine. That is the nature of consciousness evolution," replied Jiwon while monitoring communications from across the galaxy. "Every species has the potential for transcendence. We simply help them discover it safely." The awakened humans began preparing for their own next stage of evolution.